Sometimes video games are all about creating a massive fantasy and indulging something that's utterly impossible. And sometimes it's about the exact opposite. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 10 most realistic missions in video games. Starting off with number 10, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the reboot from 2019's Clean House. So, the original Call of Duty 4 attempted to emulate the feeling of modern warfare. But as that series went on, it got a little bit more and more ridiculous. Like, the second Modern Warfare's campaign was about a Russian invasion of the United States. So it didn't really take that long for, any semblance of reality and the Modern Warfare series to part ways. The 2019 reboot is an attempt by Activision to get back to more of the grounded scenarios of Call of Duty 4, and for the most part, it really succeeds. There's a couple missions from the game that we could do on a list like this, but the most realistic by far is probably Clean House, the one where you raid a terrorist safe house. Now, the mission is slow, tense, and atmospheric in a way that most Call of Duty missions are just not.
Bravo 6, moving to the first floor.
The actual gameplay, it's kind of minimal because you're just one soldier among many storming this place, but the brief moments where you're tasked with checking rooms and clearing out hostiles are about as intense as these games get. In such close quarters, death can come in an instant, and just identifying hostiles while wearing night vision goggles is kind of a nerve-wracking experience. The body count is significantly lower than pretty much any other Call of Duty mission that isn't a tutorial, but that's just another thing about it that makes it feel perhaps a little more real. The graphics, the presentation, the gameplay, it all comes together to create this mission that feels realistic. Now, it might not actually be the most realistic mission of all time, but it's the one everyone talks about, so we wanted to get this one out of the way first. At number 9 is pouring forth oil from Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, as far as open world games go, there are few games as obsessed with realism as RDR2. The attention to detail is second to none, and the designers put just a mind-bogglingly insane level of work into this game to create a version of the Old West that is just filled with historical details that are true to life. There are, of course, some things that are maybe a little less realistic, but for the most part, realism is a thing this game leans into. Now, again, this is another one where probably more than a few missions could work here, but personally, Pouring Forth Oil Part 4 is probably one of the most realistic. Compared to some of the more over-the-top heists that show up from time to time, this is a really down-to-earth mission. Most games that include train robberies go really wild with it by making it so the robbery occurs on a move-in train, but this mission's a lot closer to how actual train robbers did it. Like, they just parked something on the train tracks, waited for the train to stop, and then robbed the passengers. For a good long while, you go through this mission without even firing a shot. It's not until you get to the cargo compartment that some train guards shoot at you, but then, even there's only a few. If there's any issue with RDR2 when it comes to realism, it's the amount of people you shoot in any given mission. Your enemies don't really have much of a survival instinct, and that does come into play at the end of the train job where some lawmen start, snooping around.
There's only 2 of you fools. We got a whole lot less to lose. Why don't the 2 of you ride away? That way neither of you get killed.
You just kill them before getting away. But outside of that, the way the rest of this mission plays out feels pretty damn real. As far as missions go, this is probably as close to a real train robbery as the game gets. At number 8 is the Malaysia Job and A Normal Life from Uncharted 4. Now, the Uncharted series is basically Indiana Jones on steroids. The games are filled with completely insane set pieces and moments where the protagonists seem like they should be dead 100 times over, but that's just part of the fun. It's not meant to be realistic, at least not most of the time. And that's what makes these particular missions at the start of Uncharted 4 stand out so much. The first, the Malaysia Job, seems like another treasure hunt, but it quickly becomes clear that Drake isn't exploring yet another forgotten ruin in an exotic location. He's actually dredging up a damaged shipping container. Instead of an exciting adventure, it's just another day in the job. So you hook up the line, make sure the cargo's intact, and then haul the container onto the ship. Pretty much it. The following mission, A Normal Life, is just as mundane. You start off in Drake's attic, you get to look at all the souvenirs he's accumulated, you play with a Nerf gun, and then you go downstairs and eat dinner. The house itself is one of the most detailed and realistic interiors ever created for a game, and the things you do in it are just as real. Like, you can heat up some leftovers, you can play some video games, stuff that we all do, but in video game form.
Is there a problem?
No, just, how do you make it go?
Push the start button.
I knew that.
All right.
I got it.
It's a fairly short sequence, and it's mostly just there for story purposes, establishing that Drake is sort of aching for the life, so to speak. But nothing else in this entire series is vaguely as realistic as these two little missions. And number 7 is Thunder Run from Battlefield 3. Now, obviously, the Battlefield series has its fair share of campaign missions that look fantastic, but there's not a lot that I'd classify as realistic. Probably the closest I can think of, though, is this one, Thunder Run, the tank mission from Battlefield 3. Probably the most noticeable thing about this mission starting out is how huge and open it is. Like, you don't really see wide open spaces like this in video games because, well, it's hard to make them interesting. Not even open world games have maps like this. A gigantic flat world would be too boring to explore in an open world game. And for most Battlefield missions, it's pretty lacking in terms of the more showy visuals that make it easy to tell where we're supposed to be going. But the emptiness makes it feel much more realistic than a lot of video game locations. How the mission plays out is pretty realistic as well. Most of the enemy's Soviet-era equipment is no match for the M1A2 Abrams tank. Their speed and battlefield awareness would allow an Abrams to run circles around tanks like that. Of course, their ranges aren't realistic at all. One of the advantages of the Abrams is that it would be able to fire outside the enemy's effective range, so most of the shooting would be at little specks in the distance if they were truly realistic. But I'll give the game a break on that. Like, it wouldn't be visually interesting or fun.
Ammo Actual, we're approaching the berm. Roger, all call signs. Continue assault into encampment. There, north side. Let's go.
There are more cool events here, like using thermal vision to shoot at enemies through a cloud of dust. There's a drone you can switch to take a rocket emplacement out, and the tense sequence where you run out on the battlefield and detonate some minefield clearing charges. It's probably one of the best parts of Battlefield 3, and it stands out as one of the most realistic depictions of tank warfare in a video game campaign mission at all, period. And number 6 is Bon Appetit in Mafia Definitive Edition. Switching from a giant battlefield to something a little more intimate. Probably one of the best missions in all of Mafia is this one. The one where Tommy escorts Don Salieri to his favorite restaurant, gets ambushed by a Morello hit squad, and, well, everything basically goes topsy-turvy.
My mother, she would be so honored if you tried her caponata.
It's a simple premise, but the details really sell it. The restaurant is lavishly detailed, the destruction caused by the hitman also lavishly detailed. All in all, there's less than a dozen guys shooting up the place, but it's still impossible to take them on in a stand-up fight. So you're forced to escape through the kitchen, then you sneak around the alley, and you ambush the gunman from the side. It's a dramatic encounter that you could easily see playing out in real life. That's what makes it feel so realistic to me. Both sides are playing a win here. The guys who ambush use overwhelming force to try to kill you, but quick wits are what keeps Tommy alive. It's a mission that can end in only a few minutes, but it's so intense and shocking. It's one of the most memorable, and yet doesn't engage in an unrealistic scale. And number 5 is LAX International Airport from Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow. The Splinter Cell series tried to be a little bit more realistic than most military games at the time. Of course, the nature of the protagonist as a one-man super spy is unrealistic, but the plots themselves are fairly grounded in reality. Probably the most grounded and possible plots come from the second game in the series, Pandora Tomorrow, which is about the U.S. being threatened by an Indonesian nationalist with a deadly strain of smallpox. At the end of the game, you manage to take out the terrorist leader, but one of the allies manages to get away with the smallpox strain, and a small group of followers infiltrate the Los Angeles International Airport where they intend to release the virus and spread it all over the world, without dwelling on modern events. It's a simple but frighteningly plausible terrorist act. There's no bomb, no hostages, no violent shootouts, just some guys in plain clothes planning to release a virus in a heavily trafficked area. The only way to stop them is to sneak through the airport and take out the disguised terrorists without anyone knowing about it, which is much easier said than done. It's an all-around great location to end a game on, and while the graphics aren't nearly as impressive as they used to be, it's still a relatively realistic setting for one of the most realistic terrorist plots ever made in a video game. At number 4 is Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare's Death from Above. Like I said in the first point, this was the Call of Duty that really went out of its way to try to create unique scenarios that felt like realistic modern war situations. This is definitely one of them. In this mission, you play as the spotter on an AC-130 gunship, and you're not even technically the guy firing any of the weapons. You're just the guy pointing the camera at targets for gunners to, gun. The entire mission has this almost eerie detachment that's reminiscent of the battlefield footage from the Iraqi war. The professional, almost bored chatter from the other crewmen only add to the realism of it. The body count is pretty ridiculous, but the presentation is immersive. The moments where you have to stop and actually listen to your crew as they tell you to look at certain landmarks just to find the enemy, it's really tense and real. The dialogue, it's a standout. Like, the crew members are sometimes stuttering or like saying while speaking. It's this sort of talk you don't normally see in gung-ho military shooters, and it just feels much more real because of it.
Okay, he's moving again. Rolling in. You got him.
And number 3 is The Paper Chase from The Witcher 3. Not a realistic game by any stretch of the imagination. It's set in a fantasy universe where magic is real, monsters exist, and basically anything's possible. But no other game has managed to create a mission as realistically mundane as The Paper Chase. Now, starts off very simple. A guy wants to repay Geralt for some service he did years ago, so he opened an account in Geralt's name at the bank so that when Geralt actually did eventually come back, he'd get money with interest. And that sounds easy, right? You head to the bank and you just say, hey, it's me, Geralt. But they think you're dead. So you need a permit, specifically an A38, to prove you are alive. So you go to window 1, who tells you need to go to either records or the archives to get the actual form. You go to the archives, you find a giant line that you just have to cut through to talk to somebody who tells you you're at the wrong place. If you go to records, he tells you need a form 202 to get a permit A38. And it goes on like that with endless red tape standing between you and the money that you're owed. If you are an adult, particularly if you have children and have dealt with various doctor's offices, you have experienced something like this at some point, and it sucks. And it's rare that a game manages to capture one of the most frustrating parts of modern life, especially when it's a random side quest in a fantasy adventure game set in the furthest thing from modern life. And number 2 is Hat Trick from Medal of Honor Warfighter. This one's probably a little more difficult to remember. When it comes to military operations in games, it doesn't get a lot more realistic than this, though. Probably because it's directly based off real events. Now, it was inspired by the real-life rescue of Richard Phillips in 2009 by the U.S. Navy SEALs. And this mission is actually incredibly simple as far as video games go. You start off on the deck of a U.S. Navy vessel, you get your eyes on some Somali pirates with a hostage on a lifeboat, then you wait. 18 hours later, a signal flare is shot off, the pirates panic, and then you shoot them. It's about as real as a military mission can get because there's overwhelming firepower and a ton of waiting around. It's not the flashiest mission out there, but that's what makes it much more realistic than many other missions. And finally, at number 1, the Fairfax residents from SWAT 4. If you're talking about these tense, realistic missions in games, it doesn't get much better than the second mission of SWAT 4. This is a hardcore tactical shooter that puts you as the team leader of an elite SWAT unit, and simply taking out all the bad guys, that's not good enough. The fact you can't just kill everyone adds an extra layer of tension to everything you do, because you never know if someone's unarmed, or if they'll give up, or if they'll shoot you on sight, and just 1 or 2 bullets is usually enough to kill you. What makes this mission so realistic is it's got one single target, a serial killer. In any other game, taking out one guy with a squad of heavily armed police would be a cinch, but this is not any other game. It's more realistic, and any wrong move can mean death. The house itself, also very realistic for its time. Dense, cluttered, confusing, piles of garbage blocking your sight lines, creepy dugout passages that make it difficult to guess just where the guy's hiding. It's a good location. Even now, it doesn't look as good as stuff nowadays, but it was very creatively put together. Most of the missions in SWAT 4 actually feel pretty real at times, but this one stands out because of the low numbers involved. It's one guy, capture, kill, one hostage to rescue. It's just this creepy, tense, and surprisingly realistic mission. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.